right. Well, I'm excited to be here this morning. You all have got your coffee, so sit back and relax, but also listen. Today, I'm going to be talking about focus groups and how it's so important to understand your audience, where they're coming from, understanding the why, and how they make those decisions. So before we get started, I know she just gave a brief introduction, but I thought I'd give a little bit more before I hear people speak. I like to know a little bit more about them. If I'm going to be listening to them for about 20 to 30 minutes, there will be a Q&A. But I graduated from the University of Oklahoma. Boomer, anyone? And I then went and worked at an advertising agency where I got to learn quickly a lot about traditional advertising, from like print ads, creative, a lot of commercials, a lot of radio spots, so kind of got the quick understanding of all the traditional advertising. And then I came and worked at Bigling and got to learn a lot about digital marketing. I got to learn some about search engine optimization, social media, and then was doing a lot of content creation myself. And now I'm at Candor. I've been there about a year. It's been super fun. I did add some photos just to show kind of the various activities we do throughout the day. It's definitely different each day, which is something I super appreciate. We do a lot of videos, so interviewing people for videos, a lot of sitting at your desk working, managing projects, and then sometimes getting to hang out with llamas with your client, and then also moderating focus groups, which is what we are going to be focusing on today. It's a focus on focus groups. So one of my favorite things that we get to do is a lot of brainstorming. I feel like that's, one of the funnest parts of being in any creative industry, whether you're an agency or working at in-house somewhere or wherever you're at, when you can kind of just let those ideas flow, get to work with your team, and just have fun with it. I think that's why a lot of people love what we do. And so it's super fun when you get to come up with the perfect idea. When you land on it. And you find that idea, and then you present it to the client or your boss or whatever. And the best part is then when they think it's the perfect idea, you've landed somewhere. So it's super exciting. You're ready to go, full steam ahead, bells and whistles, everything's approved. But wait, did anyone actually think about how the audience would react to the messaging? Did anyone think it out fully? Because no matter if they loved the idea at the beginning, they're not going to love it anymore if it's not driving business or registering with your audience. So it's really important to actually stop and think about your audience. All right, so why you invest in research is because you want them to understand, you want them to take an action. Here's just a couple examples also in the world we live in today. We're not just on the stage of wherever we're marketing to, we're broadcast everywhere. People like talking about ad campaigns that went terribly wrong, and you never want to be on the receiving end of that. This one's kind of old. Bud Light did one. It said, "The perfect beer for removing no from your vocabulary for the night." Not something you should probably say. And of course, that was on social media. People, then gave a lot of hate towards that. And it said, "Bud Light, the perfect beer for marketers about to lose their job." True. And then this was in regards to the Pepsi commercial with Kendall Jenner. So many adults had to up in so many unique and equally tone-deaf ways to make this awful ad. It's honestly breathtaking. So there's people that then catch on when you really miss the mark. It's not just your audience and your client, but it's also the world. You could lose your job. This also really stuck out to me whenever I was working on Oklahoma tourism. Rhode Island came out, they spent a lot of money, came out with a marketing campaign, paid for all the creative, and the slogan, "Cooler and Warmer." No one knew what that meant. So of course they were attacked on social media. They were like, "Cooler and warmer, what?" And so that obviously didn't land. That was just not knowing your audience. If you would have gotten more people in a room just to say, "Hey, does this make sense to you?" maybe that wouldn't have happened. And so that's so important, to get all the people in the room. Another one is Dove. They've unfortunately, one is from 2011, one's from 2018. They have a black woman as the before and then a white woman as the after. So completely just tone deaf, and that shows that you really need diversity in the room. You need a lot of perspectives. You don't want to just have the same people all the time. And you should be catching these things if anything's bad. So getting people in the room, asking how it resonates and how it will work with the audience is going to be super successful. All right, so when I say research, what is it that you want to find out? So you want to find out the why behind why people take actions. That's where you're gonna find the success. So it might be finding their preferences, their values, their sensitivities, things you shouldn't mention. You can think about things that they do like and finding all the whys of why they would purchase something versus not. So find what they would have any objections to. You know, talking and understanding your audience more is going to be the difference between you being successful or having a failure. So there's definitely the hard data, but what we're talking about today is the soft data. Finding the why, understanding your audience more. So there are a lot of listening tools that are out there that you can actually use to find out from your audience. There's focus groups, interviews, there's surveys. Social media is a great place where you can also just listen to what people are talking to. Secret shoppers, that'd be fun. So there's a lot of different ways that you can listen and find out more about your audience. So it's really important to actually take the time and fully understand them. Today, obviously, we are going to be talking a little bit deeper in having a focus group. So has anyone ever done a focus group in the room before? Cool. All right, well, it's helpful to know who out there is, and if you haven't. So I'll kind of I'm going to dive deeper into actual focus groups and how you can host them, but also be talking big picture too if you're thinking about using one yourself. All right, so base knowledge here, what is a focus group? I, of course, had to include Mad Men on this, but what is a focus group? It's about 6 to 12 people gathered in a room focusing on one topic that is led by a trained moderator who knows how to professionally lead a session around one topic that you and your client have kind of discussed. So before we go into kind of how they've evolved and how to plan them, I had a lot of fun looking at some examples of when focus groups became successful. So I'll just share them with you. Betty Crocker, still successful today, doing well. At the beginning, they were super excited about their prepackaged cake mix, thought that all the housewives in the 1950s were gonna go crazy and buy them. Well, they were not buying them. And so they had it's the birth of a focus group here. So they got some of their audience in the room and said, why aren't you buying these? What's wrong with this? And they mentioned well, we just feel kind of lazy if we're just adding water in and stirring it and putting it in the oven. We're not giving any love and care into this cake that we're making. It was the 1950s, people. So, and so then they took out the powdered egg and added, you had to put a fresh egg in there and then stir it, and then they just sold like hotcakes. So it was super successful, and just knowing and understanding the audience beforehand really made a difference. Just that one change in the product that wasn't gonna lose money or anything, and it started selling. The Chrysler ad, they realized that actually the women did have a little bit more say-so in the cars that they were buying, so they changed some of the advertising to actually appeal to the women. All of these are very men focused, but it was the 1950s. I didn't make this up. So this one was for gasoline, and they were trying to determine how they could get theirs to kind of differentiate above others. So they made it more masculine, giving that powerful vibe. So put a tiger in your tank. So all of these were successful of how focus groups got started, just showing hey, let's talk to the audience and who's actually going to be buying our product here. So are focus groups still a thing today? Yes, they are very much still being used. Almost all Fortune 500 companies are using them. And also, this was a 2012 stat, but stay with me here, but a global marketing research firm found that $4.6 billion was spent in 1 year globally on focus groups. So they're still being used and are very helpful. So like I said, you need to find the customer's why. You're trying to dig deeper and understand what makes them take motivations, what makes them take an action. I have 2 examples here. Domino's wasn't doing really well a couple years back, and people just really didn't even like their food, didn't like the product, and we're talking about it. So they were like, we hear you. We've made changes to our product. We're changing some of our, recipes, et cetera, and changed their marketing. And, they've grown and succeeded. Today it was like a 14.9% increase in sales in 1 year once they started changing how they were marketing and their food. Then this Obama, it probably feels like a long time ago since then, but this one really did stand out to me, is that they were trying to see what really stood out and how he would appeal to people the most. And people really liked hearing his strong voice. That was like the main thing that made him stand out the most. And so they kind of changed the campaign changed their marketing efforts to include more advertising that had his voice in it versus digital with his voice, radio, television. So yeah, and it worked. It was successful. All right, so when should you have a focus group? Focus groups can be used for a lot of things. It's great whenever you're looking big picture. It's also good if you're trying to A/B test a campaign and how it's going to work or how the audience are going to perceive it. It's also good if you want to maybe hear customers talking back and forth and just openly about it, because then you can kind of just be a fly on the wall and actually listen to what they're saying. It's also good if you just want to actually bring a product, if you have an actual product, to see how they interact with it, or looking at packaging. So there's a lot of various ways you can use one. One thing that I really like about focus groups is sometimes, whether you're presenting to a client or you are the client yourself hosting them, then you know that you kind of get tired of hearing from maybe your agency, or you get tired from hearing from other people who think they know, and even if you do know, but it really changes whenever it's their customer is saying it. I'm not saying this, your customer, here's 100 people that said this about your brand. So Research Live, which is industry news around focus groups research, said, the focus group is now even more vital in allowing clients to understand not only what is happening in the minds and lives of consumers, but why, and therefore what actions to take. So it really gives that color between why they're choosing to buy one thing versus another. So when should you not have a focus group? I just gotta say, don't have a focus group if you are not planning to use what you find. That is then just a waste of time, a waste of money, and you really want to do it and then actually act on it. You also don't want to do it if you feel like it's a really sensitive topic or something that people won't feel intrigued or honest, not intrigued, that they won't feel honest about discussing with other people in the room. Then you're going to get skewed results that aren't actually useful if people are scared to say how they actually feel. But besides that, there's a lot of good reasons when you can have them. So, all right, that was kind of the overview of when and why you should have focus groups. Now I'm going to dig a little bit deeper in the logistics of actually planning them, if you're interested in having one, or if you're interested in hosting one, or interested in hiring someone, Okay, budget is going to be a thing with focus groups. And so it depends on how many you want to have, but it's found that 80% of the common themes that come out of focus groups can be seen with 3 to 5 of the sessions. So dependent on your budget and how many different audiences that you have, you can do, I've done up to 10 around one topic, but then you also can do 3 to 5 if you have a smaller budget and need to just kind of figure it out, have some common themes, but not completely, don't need to dive in all the way. So that's about a good rule of thumb. All right. So audience selection, this is obviously a big part of focus groups. You can't have a focus group if you don't have any people in the room. So beforehand, you need to work with your client or your boss or whoever you're working on with this and discuss who your demographics are. Look at the different audiences you're going to target and think about your brand or your product and who you want to hear from. So make sure that's clear before you go out and recruit people to come. Make sure everyone is clear on that. And actually recruiting, that can be a challenging part of focus groups because time is very valuable and people don't necessarily want to go talk to strangers for a few hour, just 1 hour. So how to find and recruit attendees? You should just look at if you're looking at a business organization. You want business professionals. So you might want to start calling your local chambers and getting them involved, seeing if you can invite them through their email. And sometimes people aren't always open to give emails, which is understandable. And so maybe asking if they can help recruit for you. Or even we've sometimes done dark hidden Facebook ads and targeted people to say, hey, we're interested in this. You get XYZ, come and email so-and-so if you're interested. So there's other ways that you can get it if people aren't giving email lists that you need to first make contact. We've also, if we've had a group that is perfect that we would want members or a group of individuals to come from that, we've even gone to meetings, made a quick little pitch at the beginning and said, hey, we're doing this, would love for you to come, and then gotten people through that. So there's creative ways that you can find the people you need so you can at least begin communication with them. And then it's probably, success rate, you have to ask a lot more people than you want to actually come to make sure they're actually going to be there. Like I said, we're looking for, it's between 6 and 12 people that's probably the sweet spot in terms of how many people to have in a group. Another way to get them there is, of course, incentives. Money always works, but then also when I did focus groups back in the day in college, practicing with focus groups, if you just said, you get a free piece of pizza, everyone came running. So think about your audience and what's going to settle with them and what is going to get them there more. And the thing is, it doesn't always have to be money. It might even just be pull on your heartstrings a little bit. If you come, your opinion matters. We're gonna save the whales and we need your input. Whatever it is that you can get them to feel an emotional connection. Or, people also love anything exclusivity or anything. So you get to take this product home with you that isn't, all the way there. Or you get a ticket to something. So those are some different incentives depending on your budget. Like I said, money normally works if you have the budget. If not, then there's other ways you can get that. All right, so moderating. This is super important. This is one of the most important things. You don't want to have someone leading a focus group that hasn't been trained or doesn't know how to lead the focus group. You're gonna then get skewed results. It's just not going to lead well. So presence really matters. The moderator should come in, be very non-authoritative, be non-threatening, and just be there. You're supposed to be like a fly on the wall, almost forget that you're the one leading the conversation. You're just there to listen to them. You shouldn't, if you're going in and have so many opinions coming up there, you really don't do that. You're there for them and you appreciate their input and their insights. So your presence, be relaxed, calm, and help lead a discussion. And then observer interference, that's when people might act differently whenever people are watching them or hearing them or taking notes. People tend to behave differently than if they were just talking with a friend. So that's also at the beginning you should say, I'm not here on anyone's side. I don't have a specific thing I want you to say today. I really just want to hear your opinions here and let them kind of understand you're not wanting something specific from them. Another thing we ran into a lot is people thinking there's going to be a payout or a big ask or something at the end, they were waiting for us to then make a pitch to them. So it's good to say we really are just here to listen to you. That's really all we're here for. And then body language. So this is super powerful with the moderator. There's a lot of different, normally it's strangers that have a lot of different behaviors in the room. Some are probably going to not want to talk as much, whereas there's normally at least one person that wants to talk the entire time. And so you have to kind of know how to tell them, okay, we gotcha, moving on. And it's not a bad idea. You can even use their names. We always don't forget name tags, have their a name tag or a nameplate so you can call on people if the quiet people aren't, speaking up. Just do it in a, like I said, non-threatening way. If someone is talking too much, maybe turn your body from them to someone else and stand strong. If you're wanting someone to speak up, normally if you point to them and say, yeah, and encourage them to, talk. And so really kind of knowing when to be like, okay, gotcha, moving on to so-and-so. But you don't want to offend anyone, so obviously handling that in a good manner. And then script. So script, you want to have just a loose guidelines. Work with your client or whoever you're working with, your boss, and make sure you know what the main points you actually want to hear. You don't want to do all of these and be like, but you didn't ask this question, and you missed it all, So you want to make it clear what you're coming to find, what they want to get out of the focus groups. Make sure you know that, but don't have word for word what you're gonna say, or that's just gonna be uncomfortable. And then at Candor, we always do what we call top of mind. When people come in, especially if they already know what the conversation is about, they normally have a lot of things that they want to get off their chest. They are like, I had a really poignant, smart thing to say, and I want it to be heard today. And so they have a lot of things they want to say. So what we call the exhale, letting out all their information, all of any thoughts they have at the beginning. It normally lasts 3 to 5 minutes. You kind of feel when people are wrapping up, and then you can actually begin the focus group and leading it. So we are going to move on to the logistics part of this. Do we have any questions so far? Should I just keep on going? All right. So logistics-wise, you should think about a focus group like you are event planning. There is that much work that needs to be done in this. The more effort you put into at the beginning, the happier you're gonna be when it's actually the day of, when you're walking into the room. It is a lot of prep work if you wanna lead a successful, good focus group. It takes a lot of time and energy. So speaking of time, timing-wise, think about your audience. If you're wanting professionals, you probably shouldn't do one 9 to 5. It might be a better breakfast or an evening show. Evening group. And then also timing-wise, like I said, you don't want it to be hours and hours. You're gonna stop getting good information, waste everyone's time. About an hour is probably the length. If you are still getting good information, I think 1 hour, 15 minutes, and then just, probably stop. Communication, so I briefly talked about that. That is when you need to start reaching out to your attendees. We normally have about 3 touch points with the group because, like I said, if you don't have people there, you can't have a focus group, so it's super important to know you are coming, you will be there. So we normally start with emails, and then the day of actually lead with a phone call so that they know this is a real person. You're gonna upset me, even if you don't know me, you're gonna upset me. I'll be sad you're not there. So you can actually get them through the doors. Incentives, we covered that. Roles. So if you have different moderators, sometimes we've done it where it's 2 people, maybe 3. It depends how big the group is and what the topic is. 1 or 2 is normally the best, but know beforehand how you guys are going to work together. One might be giving the play-by-play while someone else is giving kind of the colored commentary. So one person is mainly leading the questions while the other one kind of points out, oh, that was a smart thing. Let's dive deeper into that. So it's kind of good to know who's doing what. Whenever you're leading these. And then the same with notes. You need to be writing down all of this clearly. So talk about that beforehand. Who's taking the notes? We normally have some flip charts where we actually are writing the notes, and that's a part of one of the moderators' role. And people do like to see, okay, I'm being heard. They got my nugget in there. And so they like to be like, we are bringing this back. You've helped us today. So notes are super helpful, obviously, for reporting, which we'll talk on later. All right, so location, this gets its own little moment. Location is super important because you want to get people there and you want it to feel right. You need the vibe to be comfortable. Like, that is something that really people need to feel comfortable and ready to share. And if you don't have that magical feeling in the room, then you're not going to get what you came to get. So location, finding the right space is super important. Before we even think about where we're going, we always go to a lot of places and actually see what it's like. And even if you've been there before, you haven't been there when you're thinking about a focus group, so it's a good idea to still go. Like, a room I went to ended up being much smaller than what I thought it was. So it's super important to actually go inside, make sure it's conducive for a focus group. We always make out just a little layout that we can send in the restaurant or wherever, or if we're setting up, just to let us know beforehand. We'd always recommend more square and wide versus deep and narrow, because you don't want to be screaming from one end to the other. You want it to feel like we're all here together and friends, so that you can have a good communication and conversation. So really taking the time ahead of time is so important. Look at those weeks beforehand versus coming in 10 minutes and saying, oh, this is terrible. Why did I do it? Because people are already coming and you have to work with it. The backdrop even matters. What is behind you? If I was standing behind here and everyone was looking at me through the window with passerbys walking by, it'd be very distracting and you would be watching other people. So keep the backdrop kind of clean. That seems like a small thing, but really all of those things matter. And then parking, can people get there? Make sure that they can get there. That can be a big deterrent for people to actually come. They might even be planning to, but then if they can't find a spot, and if there's really nothing you can do and the parking's just gonna be bad, then let people know ahead of time so they can plan for it. I need to take a breath. Is everyone good there? Okay. Moving on to refreshments. So this is something that's also super important. People, love food. I bet some of you are thinking about food right now, People love food, and that can be a big driver to get people there. People expect food or want something when they come. And so you want good food, but not so good food that it's all consuming. So you want, little quick bites that they can have and then be done with it, not like a full meal. Refreshments wise, you can always offer, maybe one alcoholic beverage, but cut it off there. You don't want it to be like a free flow of information that isn't, let them know what this is for. And then noise. So noise is a big factor. It can be, a big thing in making a focus group or not. You want everyone to hear each other. I have one oops moment that I'll share of, I went there, did all my things, even measured the room, got a layout, did it all the time, and made sure it was all good. Then we went there the day of and didn't realize on Tuesday, our next door neighbor at 7 p.m. always starts their church band practice. So it's things like that, like asking beforehand. So then we just listened in for a while to them practicing their music. But we were able to carry on. It worked out. Thank you. But thinking all of those, the more you can think of those small things ahead of time, you're going to be so much happier after you did it. So think detailed event planning. There's a lot of things that go into it.
I was going to ask this, now I really want to ask this. If you say that you need 3 to 5 sessions to flesh everything out, and you need 6 to 12 people in each session, is it the same 6 to 12 people at all 3 to 5 sessions, or is it brand new people?
Brand new people, yeah. So that is when you've already been okay, who are our demographics who normally have more than one, and you can get those niche and different groups at each section. They'll just only go to one. Yeah, thank you. All right, so that was a lot, location, logistics, going into all that. Now reporting, this is actually what you're then giving the information to the client or your boss or whoever it is. So this is the super important part. They might not care so much about the logistics and all of that, even though you do, but they want to know, what do we do? What did you find out from this? So make sure that after each session, write down everything or like get your notes on paper right after each session. You don't want to, like, even if you're like, oh, that was so great, I'm going to remember that for sure in the morning or something, like write everything down then. Also discuss with your client, are you going to be wanting a recording of all of this? Or if we have someone in the crowd, just writing down notes and jotting all of that, and discuss that ahead of time. Because obviously it'd be too late if at the end they said they wanted all the recordings and you didn't have them. So think about that beforehand, and really who is going to be reporting, and then also make sure whenever you've actually reported on it to then make recommendations. What's the next step? What do I do with all of this information? How is this going to help me? And figure out how it's going to help their business and the bottom line. So 5 top tips in focus groups. So plan, 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 think of all the details, make sure you're gonna have bodies there, make sure it's a good space, make your audience comfortable. You want everyone to feel comfortable so they can share information. Don't lead the responses. That's just the worst if a moderator is just acting up there, acting like they know everything, because we don't care what you know, we're here to hear what the people have to say. Report immediately and accurately after each of them. And then really the main thing of focus groups is so you can find the why, so you can know what drives people, why they choose decisions that they weren't going to before, how they choose one product, or if they like your brand, etc. That's giving the color and helps you understand, and that's really the difference between success and failure. So find the rest of the story, what makes people act the way they do towards your product or towards your brand, etc. And then you will find success. All right, that was it all. Let's hear some questions. Gina?
This was great, thank you. I have never done a focus group before. I've heard about it, but just so I get the right visual about it, it sounds like a discussion over a product or a question or anything there versus going in and signing a survey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, when you can take a survey, it's, you know, circle the bubbles or whatever it is. This is really allowing people to talk and kind of get more information, and it's definitely, you can dive a little bit deeper in understanding their motivations. Yeah. Yes.
Hi. This is kind of a, sorry, were you going on me? Kind of a multi-level question, so if I don't ask clearly, just ask for clarification.
Okay.
So basically, what if you wanted to get multiple perspectives, but you're worried about how influenced certain participants are? Like children are obviously very influenced by adults' opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So would you separate those focus groups and have only kids in one and only adults in one?
Yeah, I definitely would, and it depends on the topic. Of course, there's variables in all of these things, but yeah, I think understanding, okay, these people are going to be kind of on the same track, then, you know, these people are going to be. So I think understanding your audiences, maybe writing out all of your audiences and then discussing, thinking of how many sessions you're going to be able to have, and then break it out the most appropriate way that you don't think people are going to be, you know, just wanting to repeat what the other person is saying.
Okay, and then distractions. Would you try to encourage people to turn off their phones whenever they enter a focus group, or would you say that that would almost influence them?
We never actually straight out said don't use your phones. People kind of can just get upset or weird about that, but like I just wouldn't say that. Make it clear, we are here to talk to you, just engage people. People will just get weird if you tell them not to use their phones, and so just kind of encourage them to pay attention to you.
Chloe, so on the reporting piece, do you always just say what you saw, or what about making recommendations based on what you heard?
Yeah, so it's super important after you do all of this, say what you found, and then make that recommendation of what to do next. What actions can they then take as a brand or a company?
When you're doing multiple focus groups, this kind of ties on to the previous question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just concentrate on one demographic per focus group, or do you spread the demographics out across multiple focus groups?
We normally separate them out, but I mean, it kind of depends. And normally demographics will also kind of change, like dependent if you want a mom in this age or a mom in this age, like, or if you're wanting to separate out by age versus if you're a mom or not, or whatever it is. I mean, I think it's kind of based on you separating them out and then or writing them all down and then figuring out what makes the most sense. So I can't really give you a straight answer there, but I do think just kind of writing it all out, looking at it, bringing your team or people who understand it better, and then figuring out what the best way to actually break it out is going to be.
In terms of demographics and the selection process in Oklahoma City, for instance, how's that changing and how's that not changing? And also, is there more or less or a different aspect of people in, say, Oklahoma holding things in and that affecting the discussion?
Like not sharing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do have to, the moderator should be able to kind of dig a little bit more and say, well, why do you feel this way? And that really is part of making people feel comfortable at the beginning. I mean, you can only dig so far. If people don't want to share, then, you know, you can't force them to. But I think that that's so important to make everyone feel comfortable in the room and really encourage those who are starting to share to continue sharing. There's not like a huge secret there, but.
So in the scheme of various research methods, obviously this is going to give you qualitative kind of information. Would you recommend this following a quantitative study or going before or after? How does that fit?
Yep, so this is definitely, like I was saying, there's the hard data and then there's the soft data. We would recommend, I mean, they should work together, understand their behaviors, their purchasing, like how much they bought, etc., and pair it together. It should be both.
So it doesn't matter which one comes first, in your opinion?
I don't think it necessarily matters. Yeah, I mean, as long as you're getting it together. I've normally seen it where you're getting the hard data first and then following up with focus groups, but I don't think it's like drastic which order you do it in.
Use that to shape your questions for the focus
That
group?
could, yep,
Okay.
yep, that's a good point, and I agree with you.
Like let's say you did like the hard data research and you found this, you know, let's say you saw so many stats and percentages and you wanted to share that in a meeting, and like one of the questions could be, for this specific question, it states that this percentage of women or men or whatever find that blank, do you agree or disagree type of stuff.
It can be great to open and help you with the questions for sure. What we've already heard or what we found, let's go a little deeper in that. Do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like, because what I was going to say earlier to your question and also the question back there, like based on who do you talk to, what age range, what focus and target demographic, obviously it's a case-by-case basis. Based on the company, if it's a product or a service where they're just collecting data, obviously you're not going to have, depending on the topic, but I think it's safe to say generally, you're not going to have children in the same focus group, just like what she was asking. That doesn't make any sense. Because it's not. Now, if you're going to have children in there where you're asking, kind of like the commercials you see with some of these children, you're like, ooh, what's this? And you're all walking into a room trying something. That's more of a, obviously, an age-appropriate focus group type of setting. That makes more sense.
Like one easy example on focus groups, like in a school, you might do one with just the students, one with just the teachers, one with just the parents, right? So it's similar audiences that would relate and you can dig into what they say.
Similar topic from all different stances. Yeah, completely.
So, how do you get to the why? So what questions would you ask to kind of
I think asking their preferences or asking any objections they might have toward a product and just understanding their motives, what drives them, how they select different products, how they choose which brands to be loyal to.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yes.
Do you inform them that they're being recorded? Or is that their
Yeah, you'll let people know if you are going to.
I think by
Just
law
kind
you
of
have
a rule,
to.
yeah.
Every state's different, but by law you typically have to inform them that they're being recorded.
Cool. All right.